Justin, I don't know whether that's the biggest upset in Super Rugby history, but it's got to rate right up there. I mean, who called that? Who called the Drua to beat the Crusaders?
Yeah, I think it's very close to one of the biggest upsets, Marty. Not many people would have called that result. No doubt about the fact that even though the Crusaders did rest some of their key players, they've still got the firepower and the depth to be able to go over there and beat a side that are, on their day, capable of really pushing the top teams. But for them to stay in the fight and to combat, basically, the Crusaders' ability to really grind down games and grind you out, at set piece in particular, which is not a strength of the Ndrua, really showed some mettle. So I think all of those factors into the equation, not many thought that the Drua could win the game, but they thought that they probably could be competitive enough to make it at least a contest.
Yeah, I mean, so what does that led us to believe? What is there, some complacency there? I mean, I know that Razor rested some players, didn't take some players. That says to me that, perhaps that the team thought that they would win that game. I'm not saying they're overconfident, but certainly, I mean, this would be as much of a surprise to them more than everyone else, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think quite possibly when they were looking at their goals for the season and when they had to rest some of their key players to make sure that they don't fatigue them or for All Black minutes or whatever it might be, they would have thought 3 games and that this was a game possibly that they could target to do that. I thought that would have been the case when you're pre-planning your season and how you're going to manage that if you hadn't dropped your first game at home. So
right.
I would have thought that the thought process would have been from there on in, we need to get some momentum into this competition and then we'll look at resting players. At the end of the day, they've only played 2 rounds, so they won't be tired. And that's just a banana skin game and never a difficult ask. So I wonder whether or not they've literally dropped the ball there because now they've got to go to Auckland and play the Blues at home, and they're really staring down the barrel and probably slightly naively didn't target that game as a must-win bonus point game, and now they're paying the penalty big time.
Justin Marshall with S81 Test All Black, and the last time that the Crusaders were 1-3, you did your Achilles. Team came back to win the competition. Let's not forget that, okay? It's not that often that this team starts after 3 games and is behind the 8 ball like they are now. That Blues side, I thought, really gritty and gutsy against the Hurricanes. I mean, not the greatest game of rugby, but at the end of it, it's all about the result. And the Blues got it, and they got it by defending their line at the end. I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah, I thought in general they defended inside their 22 really well. The Hurricanes looked incredibly dangerous every time they got into the right zone, but they struggled for the entire game to actually get inside the Blues 22. And then at the odd time, not only good resilient Blues defence, but also some inadequacies and accuracy from the Hurricanes and some bizarre decision-making at times meant that the Blues were able to hang on and fight off in any genuine, chances for the Hurricanes to score. So they, getting down there, really, you have to take the chances you get. And I don't think the Hurricanes did either by a combination of those errors or, like you said, good Blues defence. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest game. It was incredibly physical. They really went at each other. And both coaches said afterwards, we've got some pretty sore bodies to contend with for the week. But I certainly thought probably on the balance of the game, tactically, the Blues just got a lot better. And I think that's probably why they were able to hold on and win that game, because when you boil it down, they were probably, over the 80 minutes, the better side.
Brumbies beating the Reds. I didn't watch the game. I mean, did you see that game? I mean, the result doesn't surprise me. They're a good side, the Brumbies. But, I mean, and these are probably the 2 best teams, given the fact New South Wales lost to the Rebels. What did you see from that game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I certainly feel that the Reds, for all their firepower, they're really underperforming, and something's not quite right there within that mix, and I can't put my finger on what that is. But they've got too many Wallabies and really good gritty players in that side to not be as competitive as they should be. The Brumbies, they're just a timeless machine that, under the guidance of Stephen Larkham, they know where their strengths are. They know when they get into certain areas of the field, how they can open teams up, whether that be with their back play, some of their manipulation, or they've actually got a very good set piece. They went to their driving maul quite a lot in this game, and we very well know that they are good at that, and they are good in that zone. So they're just a really, really well-balanced side. And if you're slightly off, they'll hurt you, as the Blues found out. Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing, again, that came out of that game for me was not the fact that the Brumbies just did what I thought that they would do. It's just that I thought the Reds would push them more because they're a better side than what they are. But if they were ever going to get up for a game, it would have been that one. But they really were never that close to being in the contest to get to a point to win it. So they've got some homework to do because they haven't even been on New Zealand shores yet. And, when they get here, they're going to get tested a lot more than what they are in Australia.
Justin, were you happy with what? I mean, if you're Clark Dermody, you're not going to be happy with another loss. But the Highlanders were a lot more resilient than they have been in the last couple of games. Certainly didn't ship the same amount of points or anything. But they just, they kind of look to me a bit like the Warriors versus the Roosters. They just don't quite look good enough at the moment, or as though they've got enough players to really, take on the top sides and be one of those teams.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good way to summarise it, really, to be honest. And look, I'm a little bit concerned that I'm hearing some voice coming out of the Highlanders that, we were much better, we did this well, we're kind of proud of the effort. At the end of the day, it's 3 decent big losses on the bounce. And if it was me, I'd be super pissed off, and I'd be really saying things like not good enough. We need to be in the fight. We're better than this. But saying, we were much better. Yeah, we were competitive. And he still got beaten by 20 points. Night where I thought the Chiefs looked a little vulnerable. They've had a really good start to the season, and they were slightly off on the night, which allowed the Highlanders into the game. And a good side who are playing well with confidence, when a team allows you into the game, you hurt them. They never really got that close, the Highlanders, and major problems with injury as well doesn't help. Look, I think the massive positives they're going to get for this week is the fact that they've got the force at the end of the earth in Invercargill. Most of those people from Perth probably, those force players wouldn't even know Invercargill existed. So there's probably an opportunity to get some points on the board, Marty, this weekend.
Well, what you want to get all your old mates who I'm still, probably am thinking they're still working the freezing works at Matoda, mate. Get them all down there. The ones with 3 eyes and half a head, and they want to run out into that crowd. That's what the Highlanders need, don't they? Get an absolute, yeah. Just on before we go, the Six Nations. I mean, 2 extraordinary results over the weekend. I mean, perhaps people don't read too much into the Ireland result, but when you looked at that game and you looked at the fact that they lost their hookers, they had a flanker thrown into the lineouts who was absolutely brilliant at it. It just goes to show to me that they've got such good strength and depth now. But then before we start talking about that, you got to talk about England shipping 50 at home against France. Wow.
Yeah, really interesting round of the Six Nations again. Wales, I think many predicted that they would probably be toppled by Italy, have played really, really well. However, they produced their best performance of the Six Nations. They scored some really nice tries and they looked a different side. That result, I think, kind of did raise a few eyebrows because many thought that they were going to get tipped up for the second year in a row by Italy. Then, you go on to that England versus France game, and I watched that entire game, and all I could see was just the English get bullied at Twickenham. The French were it was like boys playing against men, and they were just out physical. They got pushed off their ball. They got pushed over. Their tackling was inept. The French just ran hard at them and ran through a lot of tackles. And some of the tries that the French scored, the set piece one to Pernod at the finish was just next level good. Just players in motion, decoy runners. They just had the wood on them, and they were a completely a different side from what England were, and that's really worrying for England because they're now in a state of panic, I think, leading towards the Rugby World Cup.
It's great.
It is brilliant. Yeah, I watched it with a great big smile on my face, mate. If it wasn't so early in the morning, I would have had a beer in my hand.
Exactly, that's what I was. I got up and watched the highlight because I recorded it and I started watching it, mate. I was just roaring with laughter. But I tell you what, if anyone thinks that Ireland, okay, we all say, hey, you've never made a semi-final and everything, keep talking like that. This team is really, really, really good, and they don't need to prove it to anyone no more.
No, they don't. And I think circumstances weren't favourable for them. They were going to Scotland. It was Stuart Hogg's 100th game. Scotland have been playing really, really well. Obviously, they're away from Ireland, and Murrayfield's not an easy place to go and win, particularly against a side with its tail up. Like you said, they had a few things go against them in the game that didn't help their situation, but it didn't rattle them. And that's the sign of a good side. They just go there and they take all of those exterior things that are facing them, but they just front them, and they go out there and they play to their strengths. They execute. Sexton's banging them over from the touchline. When they get opportunities, James Lowe's playing really good rugby. Their midfield's outstanding, and that loose forward and tight five combo, the way that they utilise the ball, they just have great rhythm. And you can sometimes get overwhelmed by situations where the opposition have got big moments and key moments like 100 tests and other things going on and peripheral things to affect you. Never seems to faze them, including coming to New Zealand and having to win a test for the first time in history and then win a test series. They just came over here and went about it, didn't they, with method, and that's what's impressive about them.